When kids tell, where their stories go. When child sexual abuse is discovered, the next steps are critical to the child's well-being and the prosecutor's potential case. Editor's note: this is part 1 of 6 in a series looking at how support organizations, law enforcement, and the criminal justice system respond when a child discloses sexual abuse. Please be advised that every installment contains mentions of abuse, violence, and sexual abuse against children. Some parts contain mentions of suicide. To report child abuse, call the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services Abuse Hotline 24/7 at 1-800-252-5400 or online. If you or the victim are in immediate danger, call 911. The lobby of the Bridge Children's Advocacy Center is dappled with sunlight on a Monday, March morning. It's brighter than usual because daylight saving time had just begun the day before. With 3 figures linking supporting arms on a sign out front, finished coloring pages decorating the front of the reception desk, and movies playing in a lobby filled with big, comfy couches, the Bridge seems like it could be a pediatrician's office, somewhere a child doesn't really want to be, but they have to visit, so the staff makes it as welcoming a place for children as possible. Inside, an adult may pick up on certain safety and security details. Visitors need to check in on a tablet in the entryway before the door unlocks. A printed sign states that for privacy, pictures and video are not allowed inside. No children were present during the Amarillo Tribune's visit. The Bridge is a nonprofit that offers forensic services that aid law enforcement in investigating child abuse and sexual assault cases. It connects children and family to resources and also conducts forensic interviews with children, which are recorded for use by law enforcement, so a child doesn't need to recount their traumatic experience for each agency in the pursuit of justice. It's a service the Amarillo community doesn't want to need. It's one that we do. Towards the end of our interview with Executive Director Shelley Bohannon, after we spoke about the Bridge's processes, she said, "We understand what it takes for a child to make a disclosure and how they process through that. So for people to come in and not believe them is really challenging, because there is nothing harder than to sit down with the child and say, 'I believe you,' but these people did not. So your justice ends here." In 2025, the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services completed investigations for 644 alleged cases of sexual abuse against a child in Potter and Randall counties. These child protective investigations confirmed 81 of those cases. Nearly 9 out of 10 perpetrators of child sexual abuse are men. In order to gain access to victims, they may seek to become trusted members of the community, like a teacher, a youth sports coach, or a pastor. According to RAINN, the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, 93% of victims know their perpetrator, and only 7% of offenders are strangers to the victim. Most child victims don't disclose the abuse immediately. An estimated 55% to 70% of those who experienced sexual abuse as a child don't come forward until they reach adulthood. Dr. Lynn Jennings is a licensed professional counselor supervisor and sex offender treatment provider supervisor who has been practicing in the Amarillo area for over 20 years. She serves the top 26 counties of Texas, but said she primarily sees clients in Potter and Randall counties. Jennings treats child and adolescent sexual assault survivors, and for the past 12 to 13 years, she's primarily worked with juvenile sex offenders. Jennings said if the abuser is a member of the victim's family, it will typically take much longer for the child to tell, because they're worried about causing division in the family. Victims, in general, will worry about not being believed. I have seen cases where that has happened, where they've attempted to tell and either they've not been believed, or maybe the person they told didn't understand what they were trying to tell them. And so the abuse went on for another 1 or 2 years until they mustered up the courage again to tell somebody different or tell them more specifically what's going on, Jennings said. Jason Herring, district attorney for the 47th Judicial District, who prosecutes felony cases in Potter and Armstrong counties, said he thinks the public doesn't understand why somebody wouldn't disclose ongoing abuse, but the public also doesn't know the potential dynamics at play. The perpetrator is often someone the child knows and trusts to take care of them. Jennings encourages parents to frequently talk to their children about the adults in their lives. Paying close attention can separate green flags from red. Asking a child if their coach has ever touched them in a way that made them feel uncomfortable might reveal that the coach just helped them massage out a Charlie horse that was hurting, or it could reveal more. And there's also the whole grooming issue, because the last thing the perpetrator wants is for this kid to stop being available to them to be perpetrated against, Herring said. Director of Prevention and Advancement for Family Support Services, Monica Balderas, said grooming can start with showing favoritism, encouraging secrets, and testing boundaries. She added that Amarillo has some great educators who take the time to become a part of their students' lives. And sometimes the fear of grooming can create a barrier between students or parents and educators. But we do want parents to be vigilant, and we want them to ask questions. We want them to get to know their students' educators. If you're spending more than 3 days a week at a practice, or at a rehearsal, or doing clinicals, or whatever it may be, get to know those educators, get to know those coaches, get to know those leaders, so that it's easier for you to identify if there's anything inappropriate going on, Balderas said. Jennings said that there are 2 sets of people a child predator grooms: the target and everyone around them. The perpetrator's first goal is to gain access to children, then to identify their target. Jennings said that while children with supportive and attentive families can and have also been victims of sexual abuse, most of the time, the perpetrator is looking for children without a strong familial support system. Keep an eye on the relationship between your child and your child's coaches. If you get a feeling that maybe something is not quite right, or they're showing an over-interest in this kiddo, I would probably create some good boundaries there, because there are so many great soccer coaches that really love kids and invest in them in appropriate and healthy ways, Jennings said. After identifying a target, a predator's goal is to maintain access to that child, and then to prevent disclosure and build an alibi. Jennings said that when the act of abuse isn't actively happening, the child could seem fine around their abuser. If they become this pillar of this person's life, and the family trusts them, the likelihood of the kiddo telling about what's going on, if there's something inappropriate going on, is going to be much less, because everybody loves this person, and they're never going to believe that he would do this, Jennings said. A child who is being groomed often feels a lot of pressure to keep the secret, Balderas said. Because of that pressure, their joy, their grades, and their relationships can suddenly plummet. The sudden secrecy from messages or things like that can really cause students to just go into dark depression or anxiety-ridden behavior. Defensiveness, of course, defending somebody that they trust, defending somebody that they look up to, Balderas said. According to RAINN, victims of childhood sexual abuse are 4 times as likely to develop symptoms of drug abuse and PTSD. Jennings said the long-term effects of grooming can manifest differently depending on the child's developmental stage and on how quickly the abuse is put to an end. Getting the child into therapy to work through their trauma early on can minimize the long-term impact. Jennings said that if the grooming process is stopped early on, the victim will have less long-term effects. So let's just say a child has been groomed, and the grooming process is found out and stopped. That child is going to have less long-term effects than a child who has been continuously, over the course of time, has been abused over and over and over and over and over. They're always depending on who grooms them and then who acts out on them, Jennings said. By law, everyone in Texas is a mandated reporter. Reporters who make a report in good faith and without malicious intent are protected from civil or criminal liability, even if the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services determines that there was no abuse. Balderas recommended that a parent who is worried that their student may be a victim of abuse by a teacher or coach contact a school resource officer first, or contact other local law enforcement. If they don't feel comfortable with that, they can reach out to Family Support Services and request an advocate to help them navigate seeking help. Randall County Sheriff Christopher Forbes, who has served the Randall County Sheriff's Office since 1992 and was first elected in 2020, said most of the cases his office handles would first be brought to a patrol deputy, who would bring the information to an investigator. The investigator would interview the outcry witness. Unless it's an emergency situation, Forbes said RCSO would schedule a forensic interview for the child with the bridge. The outcry witness is the first adult a child discloses their abuse to. Sometimes the outcry witness is not technically the first. A child may have disclosed abuse before and not been believed. Texas allows outcry witnesses to testify in court, even though their testimony is legally considered hearsay evidence. One of the things that is common with victims, and especially child victims, is that they've lost control. They don't have any say over what's happening, and so we want to give some of that back to them. And so it's really important for us to explain to them what's going to happen, who's going to be where, so that there are not any surprises, and they feel like they have some kind of control over what's going on. Shelley Bohannon, executive director of The Bridge, said. After explaining the process, the interviewer and the child head to an interview room, sometimes with a translator or an assistant if the child has special needs. Bohannon said the interviewers are trained to ask non-leading, developmentally appropriate questions and follow a semi-structured narrative process, which gives them a flexible plan for talking to children in a way that can allow the child to relax. The interviewer establishes that the child knows the truth from lies and asks for the truth. Because it's important for trust, for each of them to understand that we're going to be as honest as we can be in here, and then basically, we just ask them, how come they came to see us? And let the child talk to us about whatever has happened, Bohannon said. Bohannon said that at that point, the police or CPS may have already visited the child's house or school, so the child may already have an idea of what is going on. The purpose of the interview is to gather information, whether or not it substantiates the allegation. Sometimes, a sexual assault nurse examiner, SANE, exam is needed. An advocate from FFS could accompany the child or family to the hospital exam, or the exam could be performed at the bridge. After coordinating with advocates from FFS and the bridge, Forbes said the RCSO's job is to work with CPS to make sure the child can't be further harmed by the perpetrator. If the offender lives in the same household, they or the victim are sent to a different location. There are cases where we can make an on-view arrest, but they're very rare, because the information that we're gathering is usually, in these cases, it's not a crime that has just happened. Whenever these outcries happen, quite a bit of time has passed from when this happened, just because of the nature of the offenders against children, Forbes said. The bridge advocates continue to check in with law enforcement after the forensic interview to determine how they can help the child or family. The bridge also connects children with counseling and other services. Because while we don't have authority to intervene in the decision-making of the case, we do check in just to see it, just to see what direction they're going. Because if this is going to go into a trial situation on the criminal side or even civil side, they really need a therapist that's highly trained in trauma-informed counseling, Bohannon said. The next step: prosecution. To report child abuse, call the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services Abuse Hotline 24/7 at 1-800-252-5400 or online. If anyone is in immediate danger, call 911. If you suspect you are in an abusive relationship, reach out to a parent, teacher, mentor, or trusted friend, or call the National Domestic Violence Helpline at 1-800-799-SAFE 7233. For more resources, visit the Bridge or Family Support Services. The Amarillo Tribune is our community's first nonprofit, community-funded digital news organization. Our donors and board members believe that local news is a pillar of our democracy and, as community members, might advocate for other causes and be mentioned in our coverage. We are transparent about who donates to us. Please find a list of our donors here and of our board members here. Back. Thank you for your response. Do you feel more informed about this topic? Required. 1. Not at all. 2. Somewhat. 3. A lot. What questions do you still have about this topic? What did we get right, and what can we do better? Name required, email required, send feedback submitting form.